Hello, friends. Today I'm going to read Ernest Satow's diaries for Shanghai, 1861 to 1862. So just give me a moment when I will share the text. There we are. Okay, off we go. Ernest Satow's diary, Shanghai, 4th of November, 1861 to 16th of March, 1862. November the 4th, 1861, left Southampton in England, Monday, 3 p.m. November 10th, Sunday, got into Gibraltar Harbour at midnight. November 11th, Monday, left Gibraltar at 8 a.m. November 15th, 1861, Friday, arrived in Valletta Harbour in Malta at 10 a.m., left at 4 p.m. The footnotes at the bottom explain things like Valletta, which is a British possession or was a British possession, Malta, in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. November 19th, Tuesday, anchored in Alexandria Harbour, that's Egypt, at 8:30 a.m. and arrived at Cairo at 4 p.m. November 20th, 1861, Wednesday, left Cairo at 9 a.m., arrived in Suez 2 p.m., embarked at 4 p.m., weighed anchor 9 p.m. So going down the Suez Canal. November 26th, 1861, Tuesday, arrived at Aden, 10 p.m. November 27th, Wednesday, left Aden at 6 p.m. December 7th, Saturday, anchored in Galle Harbour, that was Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, at 9 a.m., left at 4 p.m. December 14th, Saturday, arrived at Penang, 11 p.m. December 15th, Sunday, left Penang at 9 a.m. December 17th, Tuesday, anchored in New Harbour, Singapore at 8 a.m. December 18th, Wednesday, left at 8:30 a.m. December 30th, Monday, anchored opposite Manila, the Philippines. 1862, January the 4th, Saturday, 4 p.m. January the 8th, 1862, Wednesday, anchored at Hong Kong at 10 a.m. January the 10th, Friday, left at 3 p.m. So that's purely the itinerary there. And January the 16th, Thursday, 1862, arrived in the anchorage at Shanghai at 11 a.m., immediately took a shore boat, and leaving my baggage in the ship, presented my letter of introduction to Lindsay and Company, a trading company, as you can see below in the footnotes. At the time, the Suez Canal was under construction and did not open until 1869. Passengers would disembark at Alexandria or Port Said and travel overland to Suez, where they would pick up another ship and continue their journey. So I was wrong about the canal there, sorry. Not received very cordially, but nevertheless was offered a bed, which I accepted. I there called on the consul, who was out, but the head assistant, Jones, informed me to my great surprise that I am not to go to Japan at present, but that Mr. Alcock, seeing of what importance the Chinese language is to a Japanese scholar, has given orders for my detention here till the ice breaks up in the north, and then for my proceeding to Peking, where I am to stay a year and a half in order to form an acquaintance with the Chinese tongue. Was introduced to a Middleton of the consulate, Markham the vice-consul, and Dr. Winchester. Had tiffin with Jones and was introduced to Mrs. Jones, who is just like Fanny Reynolds, and to Jameson, the other Japanese student interpreter, who has been sent back from Japan for the same purpose as I am detained for. After tiffin, I saw the consul, Medhurst, who advised me to go to Astor House Hotel in the American settlement. Jones accompanied me and made an agreement for board and lodging at $90 per mens, that's per month, of which I am to pay $40 for board. At present, have a bed in my sitting room, as house is rather full. Returned to Lindsay's and told the head what were my plans, got my circular notes cashed at the bank, and came back to Astor House to unpack. Dined at Markham's with Broster of the Imperieuse, Sturt of the Marines, Green, and Middleton. After dinner, an alarm was given of the approach of the rebels, turned out and found all the people in a great state of excitement. Now we'll check the footnotes on the same page. So Medhurst is Walter Henry Medhurst. The consul, Sir Harry Parkes, was absent. C. Treasure Jones was the first assistant at the consulate. Mr. later Sir Rutherford Alcock, 1809 to 97, the first British diplomatic representative to live in Japan, with a chapter by Sir Hugh Cortazzi on Alcock. Satow would quickly come to disagree with the notion that it was a good idea to learn Chinese in order to facilitate the learning of Japanese. In the entry of 18th of May, 1862, he describes it as foolish, idiotic, and waste-timeful. J.T. Middleton is the third assistant consul. John Markham, older brother of Albert Markham, mentioned in the entry of 14th November 1862, when Satow was in Japan. Charles Winchester was the British consul in Hakodate, Japan. Tiffin was a word that came from India. It could mean a light meal, but Satow uses it to mean lunch. Jameson is R.A. Jameson, the first Western-style hotel in China. That's the Astor House Hotel, I think, and the social center for foreigners in Shanghai. Although much altered, the hotel is still there and is now known as the Pujiang Hotel. An abbreviation of mensis, Latin for month. Circular notes were forerunners of travelers' checks, enabling travelers to obtain local currency in exchange for a note from a bank. The Imperieuse was a British man of war, and the rebels were Taipings, or Taipin in Pinyin, who were fighting against the Manchu-led Qing dynasty. At this point, they were in control of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, with their capital in Nanjing. They had unsuccessfully tried to take Shanghai in 1860. The rebellion was, in effect, a civil war which lasted from 1850 to 1864 and was eventually defeated by the Qing government, with the aid of British and French forces having cost an estimated 20 million lives. Oh, my Lord. Okay, just going back. So from the diary again. After dinner, an alarm was given of the approach of the rebels. Turned out and found all the people in a great state of excitement. Marines and field piece on the bridge. Went for my pistol and stick and waited on bridge there. Returned for purse. Went to Markham's and came home to bed at 10:30. Slept well, though disturbed every now and then. Friday, January the 17th, walked for 2 hours in Shanghai and visited some curiosity shops. Tiffin at Jones, saw Ying, Jameson's teacher, but could not come to any arrangement. Dined there, came home at 9:30 to bed. Saturday, January the 18th, 1862, stopped indoors all the morning, arranging my goods and chattels. At Tiffin, heard that the rebels are only 1 mile off. Went to the consulate and found the people there quite free from excitement. Took a guide to the mission house, which is at present a scene of great disorder, a new chapel being in course of erection. Saw Mrs. Muirhead and talked with her till the doctor came in. Bought a grammar from him and dialogues, which I am to get on Monday. He is also going to try for a dictionary for me. After leaving their house, I wandered about in the settlement, trying to get a box for gloves, etc. Visited Cheong Fat, a Canton man, and another who paints pictures of ships, etc. Could not get one to my mind. Directly I returned, I began to study the grammar, but found it rather puzzling. After dinner, introduced to a Mr. Sitford, formerly a shipmate of birds. Began Locke's essay on the understanding. I noticed today that Chinamen never shake hands, but always bow. Also, no Chinaman of respectability walks. One I saw riding on a pony with a blue umbrella on a long pole carried before him, and several men following, some Nob, I suppose. Last night there was a severe frost. Nob would be a high-class person, I think. January 19th, Sunday, after breakfast, Red went to church at 11. Church would hold 500 people. Lofty ceiling of wood, walls of plaster, slate color, and painted in blocks, pillars which support the ceiling of same color. Nice organ and pretty good singing. Rather surprised that they had no communion service. After dinner, took a walk with Bird and Sitford to the ditch, which is being dug between the Suzhou and Yangqing Pang creeks. Multitudes of Chinamen at work who used a sort of four-prong rake like Okay, and here are the footnotes. She was with her husband, William Muirhead. This is Mrs. Muirhead, I think, who had been sent to China by the London Missionary Society. Bird was probably J.S. Bird, who worked for the shipbuilder G.H. Drew and Company. The correct title for the Locke essay is An Essay Concerning Human Understanding. Chinaman, now discriminatory. This term was acceptable in Satow's day. In Chinese, Suzhou He, this creek flowed through Shanghai, and marked the border between the British and American settlements. And note 26, the Yang King Pang in Pinyin Yanjingbang Creek marked the southern border of the British settlement. It was filled in and became Edward VII Avenue. All right, back to the main text. Multitudes of Chinamen at work who use a sort of four-prong rake like a pitchfork bent at right angles to the handle. They carried the earth away in baskets to form a breastwork. Also saw the French battery where 3 6-pounders are to be mounted. Went up onto the city wall, which is pierced by thousands of embrasures, while not a single gun was to be seen. From the point of view, the city looked very large, and near the walls, the houses are much dispersed. The walls are 30 feet high and 12 feet thick at the bottom. The parapet is only about 2 feet thick. The part we saw is held by our Sikhs. After returning home, played chess with Bird, was introduced to a Mr. Stevenson, manager of a lighterage business, after dinner. Sitford stood 2 bottles of champagne and 2 glasses of that, with a go of hot whiskey and water served to be quite enough for him. Would not take any nightcap, as I have no wish to show off that way. January the 20th, Monday, called on Dr. Sibbald with letters of introduction, hoping that he might be inclined to offer me a room in his house, which he did not, but asked me to dine with him today, January the 21st. Went and bought Sin Ching Lu and a glove box. After tiffin, called at the consulate and on Jameson, then walked into the city for writing materials and called on Reverend W. Muirhead, who was not at home. Came home and practiced Chinese writing. After dinner, played whist with Bird and Sitford. January 21st, Tuesday, went with Bird to an auction in order to buy books. Could not get what I wanted as they were sold in one lot. Saw Dr. Sibbald there. Carried my boxes over to the consulate for safety. Heard that on Sunday, the French at Wusong had killed about 130 of the rebels. The Chinese imperialists cut off 2 heads and a lot of ears and paraded them through the settlement with great exultation. Was ordered to go and write at the consulate today for 2 hours and found I could not get off. Learned from Jameson that Ying cannot come to me for a fortnight. Took Broster with me to Muirhead's. I walked up alone, leaving him below in the veranda. He got tired of waiting and came upstairs, peeping into the schoolroom where Mrs. Muirhead was praying with a lot of Chinese. Okay, and here are the footnotes. Lighterage, the transferring of cargo between ships of different sizes. Often it was done to lighten a ship so that it would be high enough in the water to enter a port. F.C. Sibbald was a medical doctor living in Shanghai. Satow uses C as an abbreviation for with. It comes from the Latin word cum, which has this meaning. Satow means January 20th. T.F. Wade, Sin Ching Lu, or Book of Experiments, the first of a series of contributions to the study of Chinese. In Pinyin, Wusong, a port town 22 kilometers downriver from Shanghai. Yeah, near the sea, in fact. Satow was reluctant to do consulate work, which for him would have involved nothing more than copying out letters and dispatches, because he was supposed to be a student interpreter whose sole job was to learn the language. He frequently complains about orders to work in the consulate until he is promoted to interpreter in April 1865, when he's in Japan. All right, so continuing with the diary text, he got tired of waiting and came upstairs, peeping into the schoolroom where Mrs. Muirhead was praying with a lot of Chinese women. After he had been upstairs a little time, he began to get awfully funky and wanted to go down again. I proposed that he should tumble over the balcony, but that did not seem to suit him. Directly Mrs. Muirhead came up, he was introduced and immediately rushed away. Brought some Chinese exercises. Bought? Okay. No. Mrs. Muirhead offered to let the old fellow give me some lessons, but the old fellow did not seem to see it. Dined with Dr. Sibbald, met Moncrief, Lay, and his nephew, a Canadian, rather a fool. Played whist, got home about 12. Lay knows a teacher with whom I can have if I don't wait for Ying. January 22nd, 1862, Wednesday. Called on F.R. Gamwell and Simpson and Company, but neither offered me beds. Called on Lay for his teacher's name. Worked all the rest of the day at the consulate, tiffin and dinner with Jones. January 23rd, Thursday. Finished letters home, asked the old lady to send me a lot of things, that would be his mother, I suppose, and gave her a list of things I am going to send her. Wrote to the postmaster at Hong Kong to stop letters from going to Japan, since he was no longer going to be there for a year and a half. Dined with Middleton and Green, awfully cold night, began talking about the service and got quite disgusted with it. I dare say it is not so bad as it seems. The climate is the only thing I care about, though pay is small. Having an attack of diarrhea, put on a cholera belt, which is about 12 inches too large round the waist. Saw Lenny and Dr. Winchester at the consulate. January 24th, Friday. Stayed at home all day and worked at Chinese. Took a walk on the Bund in the evening. The Shanghai Bund is very famous. Horrid cold. After dinner, went to Vetch's room, who showed me a lot of Japanese books, pictures, etc. Nice chap, nurseryman in Chelsea. He had lots of dealings with Vetch later in his life, when he was in England, in fact, or the Vetch family. January the 25th, Saturday, stayed at home and worked at Chinese 5 hours, went over to see Jameson, read Locke. Okay, so here are the notes for this page. Funky means to be meant to be frightened. Moncrief, a merchant with Grove and Company. There were several men called Lay in China at the time. This one was probably H.N. Lay, Horatio Nelson Lay, the Inspector of Customs, a silk merchant. I don't know what that refers to. I have to go back to see. A German firm of merchants. The pay was indeed low. Student interpreters received £200 a year, which in Britain was a decent salary, well above the average wage there of around £50 a year. However, living costs were much higher in China, and it was very difficult for a student interpreter not to become indebted. Satow had to borrow money from time to time. For more on this, see P.D. Coates, The China Consuls, Oxford University Press, 1988, pages 87 to 91. A cholera belt is a belt of flannel or silk. It was designed to prevent the abdomen becoming cold, and therefore the theory went to stop the wearer catching cholera. And then Vetch, John Gould Vetch, who was traveling in China, Japan, and the Philippines in order to find plants that could be introduced to Britain. For more on him, see Amanda Herries, Early Plant Collectors in Japan, H. Cortazzi edited Britain and Japan Biographical Portraits, Volume 4, London Japan Library, 2002, pages 397 to 408. Okay, let's go to the next page. January 26th. Hard frost, ice in my water this morning. Went to church and returned after tiffin was very nearly over. Saw Sybil's nephew, who had on a shocking bad hat. Snowing so that I can't go out. What a horrid bore. Limoon arrived with a portion of mails. January 27th, Monday, deep fall of snow in the night. Cadiz arrived with the rest of the mails. I think these are steamers and passengers, among whom was Maguire. Bird arrived from Ningpo in the Shandong. Again, a steamer, I would say. Race over to the consulate and found that there were no letters for me. In the evening, went with Vetch through the snow to Mitchie's, Lindsay and Company, who lent us papers, asked us to come and play billiards, and promised to mount me when the snow breaks up. Saw Dr. Dixon, a traveller, and a Gordon of Lindsay and Company's house. Got home at 12 and sat up to read the news. Cadetships established at Hong Kong for Chinese interpretorships. Salary £200 a year, books, quarters, and teachers found. To be appointed interpreters at £400 a year, not before 2 years. And if go home before the expiration of 4 years without leave, passage money out, plus £200 for teachers and books to be repaid on demand. Telegram that war has been declared against America, Northerners, by England on account of the Federalists stopping our mail steamer and taking 2 Confederate commissioners out of it. It is believed here to be a hoax about war and that the Americans will apologize. This is all about the American Civil War, isn't it? January the 28th, Tuesday. Snow continues. Went over and got my letters, which were from Father, Mother, Agneta, and P.S. from Arthur. I tried to get into the Malu and get some Indian ink, but could not on account of the snow. Chinese have a stupid habit of standing still in the way when you want to pass them. I astonished one with a push that tumbled him over, and another ran against me and smashed his umbrella. Got a dictionary from Middleton, spent the evening with Vetch, talking till 12 o'clock. January 29th, Wednesday, went with Vetch to see his plants, called on Muirhead about a Japanese vocabulary, William's Canton Dictio, and got a gift from him of an old worm-eaten copy. Okay, here are the footnotes for this page. Alexander Mitchie, as well as being a trader with Lindsay and Company, he was author of a biography of Alcock, the Englishman in China during the Victorian era, as illustrated by the life and career of Sir Rutherford Alcock. To mount him is to equip him with a horse. H.P. Gordon. Agneta was Satow's older sister. For information about Satow's family background, see Ernest Satow, A Family Chronicle of the English Satows, privately printed at Oxford, 1925. See also Chapter 1 of Ian Ruxton, edited The Diaries and Letters of Sir Ernest Mason Satow, Lewiston, Edwin Mellon Press, 1998. Thank you, Robert, for mentioning that. So a broad thoroughfare, I don't remember what that refers to. 46, the Malu, yeah, a broad thoroughfare that connected the Bund with the racecourse, otherwise known as the Nanking Road. In Pinyin, Malu, or Horse Road, got its name because foreigners used to ride their horses along it. And Canton Dictio is a S.W. Williams, a tonic dictionary of the Chinese language in the Canton dialect. Next page. William went with Vetch to see his plants, called on Muirhead about a Japanese vocabulary, William's Canton Dictio, and got a gift from him of an old worm-eaten copy of the first edition of Medhurst's Sentences. Went and bought a piece of ink. Went to Fogg's after a copy of Williams, but had none. Had a trucky lot of books. At a Canton shop was asked $50 for 3 mother-of-pearl studs. Called on Jameson, worked at Chinese in the afternoon, was introduced to Captain Holland of the Marines, talked with Vetch again till 11. January 30th, Thursday, studied Siu Ching Lu all the morning and afternoon, received a visit from Middleton, went out of the Bund at 5, met Bird and quitted him rather suddenly to snowball Middleton, Jameson and Sturt, snowballed a few Chinamen, one of whom remonstrated in the most perfect English, received a visit from Jameson after dinner. January 31st, Friday. At breakfast, Holland asked me if I would like to accompany him and his mariners on a walk in search of the rebel outposts. Said yes, with much pleasure, and went with him to his wretched quarters, top, changed from outside the post office. Set out a little after 10, walked down the Malu, round the racecourse, along paths of hard, downtrodden snow up to the stone bridge, which consists of 3 stone piles in the river. The illegible word was connected by wooden drawbridges. There is a good-sized village at this point. After marching an hour and a half, we came to a pretty village situated in the midst of bamboo groves and with a creek running through it called Woodlands. Another hour brought us to a town which had been burnt by the rebels. The houses seemed at first quite deserted and were filled with snow, but as we penetrated further, we found people repairing damages and at the center, where we saw 2 stone bridges over 2 creeks joining, we saw plenty of Chinese. Here the men had something to drink, and I tried to make out the name of the place, but could not, so that is at present a mystery. Wongdu. Coming back, we noticed a joss house, and etc., defended by a rampart and stakes. We lost our way for some time till put into it by a Chinaman, recrossed the Sucho Creek by a ferry, got hold of another Chinaman who put us into the road to Shanghai. At last we came to another village, and here I got up to Holland, having left Sturt miles behind. As we came back to the depth of snow we floundered through was something awful. As we came back, I'm not sure. At different parts of the marsh, the snow was melted and was beastly muddy. But coming back through Suzhou, and here are the footnotes for this page, Walter Henry Medhurst, Chinese Dialogues, Questions and Familiar Sentences, literally rendered into English, with a view to promote commercial intercourse and to assist beginners in the language, first published in 1844. The author was the father of the British consul in Shanghai. H. Fogg and Company, Ship Chandlers, an important figure in Tao Buddhism. He is thought to have compiled the first collection of Taoist scriptures that today are the core of the Taoist canon. That's footnote 50. That's Siu Ching Lu. And 51 is a small temple for worshipping Chinese deities. That's a joss house. Okay. All right. on we go. As we came back to the depth of snow we floundered through was something awful. At different parts of the marsh, the snow was melted and was beastly muddy, but coming back through Suzhou Bridge was the worst. We arrived back at the quarters at 4:10, I with a hungry belly. The glare from the snow was so strong that it scorched my face and made my eyes bloodshot. February 1st, Saturday. My eyes very sore this morning, and so had to study Chinese in gig lamps. Saw Bird, did not go out until 9 p.m., when I just crossed over to the post office to see if there were any letters, but found the report of the mail having come in to be all a hoax. Some vessel had arrived with letters for a private house carrying report of Prince Albert's death. February the 2nd, Sunday, began reading Cummings' Redemption Draweth Nigh, which Vetch lent me. Did not go to church, and Middleton coming in persuaded me to go and skate, which I did, not without qualms of conscience. Query, is it right to skate on Sunday? Let wiser heads answer that. It requires some thinking to answer it. Borrowed skates of Reynolds the engineer. In the evening, went to the American church with Vetch and Rice of the Coromandel. A Russian preached. He read the prayers very badly and did not sermonize well either. Afterwards came back to supper in my room. Stopped up till 12 talking. Amongst other things, discussed whether it was of any use my learning Chinese in order to become a Japanese interpreter. Unanimously agreed in the negative. As Vetch says, it is like a man learning French in order to learn Italian, because he who knows the first will find the other easier than if he knew no French. But it is certain that he will never overtake one who learns Italian at once. When all goes, I must try and get Winchester to let me go over to Japan. How sensible Vetch was. February the 3rd, Monday, called on F.R. Gamwell and heard from him that the mail had arrived the day before. I saw the newspaper, which was full of the news about the Trent and Cap wicks. From there, went to call on old Muirhead about a Japanese vocabulary and Williams Canton dictionary. He promised me copies if possible. Walked down the settlement to buy pens. Saw some Chinese exhibiting pictures and quantities of dice, dominoes, and toys being sold. Went into the city and bought a bamboo 50 cents. The shopman had plenty of, and here are the footnotes for this page. Gig lamps are slang for glasses. They were the pair of oil lamps that gigs used to carry. Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's husband. He had died on the 14th of December, 1861. The title in full of the Cummings book, let me see, Cummings' Redemption Draweth Nigh, is The Great Preparation, or Redemption Draweth Nigh. And the book is by the Scottish clergyman John Cumming, so Satow was incorrect to put the apostrophe after the S. Cumming believed that Judgment Day would come by 1867, hence the need for preparation. British man of war, that refers back to what? 55. Coromandel, yes. And 56. Where is 56? Trent and Cap wicks. Okay. This was a major diplomatic incident during the American Civil War. On the 8th of November, 1861, a ship commanded by a Union captain, Charles Wilkes, not Wicks, intercepted a British mail packet, the Trent. So it's Trent and Captain Wilkes, in fact, and removed 2 Confederate diplomats who were bound for Europe to press for diplomatic recognition for the Confederacy. This was considered by Britain to be an act of war, but President Lincoln disavowed Wilkes' actions, and so war between the Union and Britain was averted. Okay, moving on with the main text. The shopman had plenty of carved bamboo vases. They had been evidently playing at dominoes and dice. I sat down and made them write down the Chinese for each, and astonished their weak minds by telling them that English have all the same that. English have all same that. And showed them how to play, at which they were much delighted. I wonder what that means. English have all same that. Went about trying to get chessmen, but they either could not twig or else had none. I saw also some men playing a game of cards with long strips of pasteboard, 3.5 inches by 3/4, which were differently marked. Plenty of exhibitions of pictures were about. The cold was so great that the juice of an orange I bought was quite frozen. Lunched on earth nuts and kumquats. Came home through the suburb, there buying the fig nuts. I gave some cash to a youngster, and another immediately clinchined. I'm sorry, for some, but no. Went into a Joss house where a lot of Chinese were playing and singing. Joss himself was not there, but a plentiful meal of fruits and nuts was set out for him. Called at the consulate and found that Jones had a draft for me to copy. Refused to take it, but it was sent after me. Dined on board the Coromandel. Rice lent me Commodore Perry's expedition to China and Japan. That's Commodore Matthew Calbraith Perry. Drank my first glass of whiskey and water, awfully cold, coming home. February the 4th, Tuesday. Got my letters from P.O., post office, from father, mother, and Sam. Told Middleton that I am without paper to copy that dispatch on. I am certainly not going to use my own for consular service. Finished letter to Joe Taylor, wrote to governor and partly to the old lady, his mother, I think. Went with Vetch on board the Coromandel, Imperieuse, and Lanrick. Was much surprised to see the immense field of drift ice between the ships and Putung. The current carried it along at an immense rate. Introduced to the first lieutenant, first engineer, Admiral Secret, Doctor, commander of the Imperieuse. Secret. Went on the ice with Vetch, had a slide, saw Lenny, Gamwell, and Maud. February 5th, Wednesday, went to Lenny to bother him for his skates. Saw Fry, who is in the same house with young Winstanley. Found the ice to be very bad, and so returned before tiffin. Returned the skates after tiffin and went with Vetch to the silk shop on the Yan King Pung Creek, where I invested £10 in a silk dress for the old lady and gauzes for the girls. And here are the footnotes for this page, page 9. A word used in Chinese ports as a greeting. It was a corruption of the Chinese phrase "sing sing." That's chin chin, I think. And Francis Hawke's narrative of the expedition of an American squadron to the China Seas and Japan, performed in the years 1852, 1853, and 1854, under the command of Commodore M.C. Perry, United States Navy. Samuel Satow, born 1847, was a younger brother of Ernest's. In Pinyin, Pudong, the settlement across the Huangpu River from Shanghai. Pudong still exists today and the name is well known, and the area is also. Joseph Fry and A. Winstanley were both with the merchants Shaw Brothers and Company. Okay, next page. Afterwards, played billiards with Vetch at Michi's and saw Dallas, Turner, Gordon, King, and Smith. Dined there and more billiards, came home at 12 o'clock. It was freezing very hard and there was a thick fog just above the ground, in consequence a hoar frost. February 6th, Thursday. Finished my letters home, and after tiffin went to the consulate, where I electrified Jones by saying I had not begun my dispatch. However, he sent over for it and I commenced and nearly finished it. Saw Captain Bradshaw at Markham's, where I went with Middleton to have a cup of tea. He, Sturt, Broster, Jameson, and Dr. Boone dined here and came into my room afterwards. I was glad when they hooked it and left me with Rice and Vetch. Rice was obliged to put it up in my room as he could not get a boat. February 7th, finished my dispatch, called on Jardine's Shroff about a boy. We'll send him in a day or two. The roads were awfully muddy. Went to Muirhead's to ask him about Tom's Chinese speaker, and he promised a copy of William's Canton Dictionary. TCS he could not get. Asked also to get me a teacher, and he will get me one in the course of next week. Went to Clifton's, the auctioneer, with the intent of telling him to sell my photographic apparatus, but as an auction was proceeding, I did not. Made an attempt to go down from the Yang King Pang to Astor House, the hotel, and when I had got considerably more than halfway, was obliged to turn back and land at Hurd's Jetty. Went to the consulate to borrow Middleton's TCS and was forced to sit down and work, sending to Smith for my tiffin. Mail per Ottawa closes today. Dispatched a sheet to Joe Taylor and half a sheet to each of the governor, old lady, Nettie, Agneta, that is, and Sam. Went down with Vetch to the Ottawa, which we had much trouble in reaching. Coming back, the boatman went all round by the Putung shore, insomuch that I thought I should never get home. Saw Maguire on board, who was obliged to go home. The following is a letter I had to copy at the consulate, and which I put in here verbatim et literatim. 157, Doig's Land, Scouring Burn, Dundee. So here are the footnotes. Barnes Dallas, auctioneer and secretary to the British Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai. Probably Henry Turner, the manager of the Agra and United Service Bank in Shanghai. Reverend William Jones Boone, a missionary with the American Episcopal Church. Jardine Matheson was a big British trading company, and a Schroff was an assessor of metal currencies. Robert Tom, the Chinese speaker, etc. The Mandarin language as spoken at Peking, compiled for the use of students. Nettie was Agneta, his sister. Verbatim et literatim is Latin and means word for word and letter for letter. So here goes with the letter. 157, Doig's Land, Scouringburn, Dundee. 11th of November, 1861, to the British Consul. Dear Sir, having got my husband half-pay stopped in consequence of his dismissal from his ship, the Elizabeth of Dundee, commanded by Captain Sampson, now you would favour me very much if you could give me any information regarding my husband, whose name is James Moore, discharged from the above-named ship, and having got no word from him in any way, if you would be as good as to let me know if he joined any other ship in Shanghai, an answer to the above at your earliest convenience will much oblige me. Yours respectfully, Mrs. Moore. P.S. He was discharged in July and was steward, I think, of the said ship, and by trade a confectioner. To the British Council, Shanghai, China, true copy, Ernest M. Satow. February the 8th, Sunday. Teacher came to me this morning, found it very difficult to get on with him, called on Middleton and borrowed Tom's Chinese speaker. So TCS is Tom's Chinese speaker on the previous page. February 9th, Sunday, spent the day with Middleton, loafing about before tiffin and reading after tiffin. In consequence of the muddy state of the streets, did not go to any place of worship. Monday, February 10th, got Middleton to examine Ho, my teacher, and he said the old fellow was a muff, but advised me to keep him, so agreed to tiffin. Did some work at the consulate and called on Rice, brought him back to dinner, played bowls and billiards with him and Middleton, lost one game bowls, 2 billiards to 1 billiards. Tuesday, February the 11th, made a contract with Middleton to work an hour in the office every day on condition that he does what I want in Chinese in the evening. I think the office work will benefit me more than the other. Began to read Devereux, borrowed 50 tales of Jones, and paid my bill to Smith of $22.75 from 15th to 31st of January. February 12th, Wednesday, after tiffin, walked up to the young King Pang and gave orders to F.A. Clifton to sell my photographic apparatus, etc., and sent them up by 2 coolies. Called on Jameson and arranged with his teacher to come to me instead of my own, whom I shall tip and give. And then the footnote, a unit of weight and also currency, that's taels. 50 taels was a substantial sum. Later, Satow mentions a horse being offered for 35. Okay, so moving on, whom I shall tip and give permission to stop away for the next 2 years at least. Mean, I suppose, lent 13 to Middleton, saw Holland, who said he was going to rout up the rebels at Plover Point tomorrow. February 13th, called on Medhurst and asked him what I ought to be doing, and to my great delight, of course, informed me that my last month's work was entirely useless and that I must begin Confucius directly. So I called on Muirhead for a copy and waited so long for the old boy that Mrs. Muirhead was obliged to ask me to stay to tea. That's Reverend Muirhead, I think, yes. At tea, I was introduced to Roberts, the former instructor of Taiping Huang, as he says. When I entered the room from behind, I thought I saw a Chinaman. He had on a blue cotton cloak with the hood over his head, and there was a yellow silk handkerchief stuffed in the breast. A pair of horn spectacles with round glass sat on the bridge of his small, sharp nose. He must be a good deal over 50, to judge from his grey beard. He did not open his lips except to ask for what he wanted in the way of food, so that I had no opportunity of hearing him recount any adventures. After tea, there was a meeting which was attended by 2 serious artillerymen, Muirhead and wife, Roberts and Cox, a missionary from Canton. The proceedings, to use a threadbare phrase, opened with praise, viz. A hymn out of the New Congregational Hymn Book, and of which old Roberts set the tune. It was one of his own composition, made up as he went on, and delivered in a shaky sort of voice. It is impossible to describe the confusion of sounds caused by the congregation attempting to follow this caterwauling of the old driveller. As for myself, I could not join in, and should have burst out into a horse laugh if the eye of Mrs. Muirhead had not been upon me. I hope my demeanour impressed her with a good idea of my bringing up. My upbringing, I think he means. This entertaining piece was followed by a most eloquent prayer from the senior of the serious artillerymen, of which the chief points seemed to be a great desire to make an impression, evinced by the frequent repetitions, maybe, and a frantic idea of putting the aspirates, which resulted in their being inserted where they should have been ignored and being dropped where the pronunciation of them was necessary to the sense. Cox also made a lame affair of his prayer, but old Muirhead made a pretty good sermon. I shall attend regularly, and here are the footnotes. M-E-N-E. This is an allusion to Daniel 5:25 to 26, in which Daniel interprets to King Belshazzar as meaning, God has numbered your kingdom and finished it. Satow is using it to mean that's an end to it. £3 British. That was note 71. Where is that? 71. Lent 13 to Middleton. Why is that £3 British? I'm not sure. On the Yangtze River, about 100 kilometers from Shanghai. That's note 72. Let me find that. Note 70. Plover Point. Okay. Elder Issachar J. Roberts was an American Baptist missionary. And 74. Let's find that. Where is 74? Gosh. 74. Hard to spot it. Ah, yes. The former instructor of Taiping Huang. So Taiping Huang, he's referring to Hong Xiuqian, the leader of the Taiping Rebellion, had spent 2 months studying with Roberts at Guangzhou in 1847. And note 75, Reverend Josiah Cox was from the Wesleyan Methodist Missionary Society. Carrying on with the main text, I shall attend regularly at his chapel when it is finished, if it turns out to be a well-arranged service, but I could not stand any more of old Roberts setting the tunes. Mrs. Muirhead comes from Islington and says she knew people at Clapton, but I believe she must have been drunk. I know she so muddled me with talking about the Hanburys that I stated that Stafford Allen was a partner in the wholesale drug business with Daniel Bell Hanbury, which must be a pure invention of my own, as I never heard of any such thing. February the 14th, Friday, dismissed my old teacher under the impression that I did not like his writing. Gave him $3 for 5 days' work and took Ying, Jameson's teacher, instead, who will suit me better. February 15th, Saturday, the Pearl arrived night before with General Sir J. Mitchell, with company of 99th Foot from Hong Kong. Saw the old fellow making himself very cheap to the women. Mounted volunteers firing blank cartridge out of the Bund. Bought a reading lamp for $3, played billiards in a most wretched manner with Middleton in the evening. Sunday, 16th February. Jones and Jameson actually visited me, and I received an invitation to tiffin from Jones, from whom I borrowed Ellis's Hong Kong to Manila in 56, which I read through and found true to the life. He discredits what Vetch told me of the Manila men on the river Pasig and Lago de Bay, maybe, sitting on eggs to hatch them, and does not mention that they break the shells and eat the contents when they are just ready to emerge by their own unaided power. Met Gilmore, a custom house assistant at Jones, a pleasant, handsome fellow whom we accompanied afterwards to the residence of the custom house. Clerks to take a view of the city and surrounding country from the lookout, which is the residence of the custom house clerks. To take a view of the city and surrounding country from the lookout, which is the highest in Shanghai. No rebels were visible. The Taiping rebels, that is. I was greatly surprised at the extent of the settlement and feel convinced that if it grows even at no greater rate than it has hitherto done, it will soon rival in importance and extent any other colonial possession of Great Britain. It must eventually become ours. I hear that Medhurst has already asked Bruce's authority to turn the Tao Tai out. So the footnotes Islington and Clapton are both suburbs in London. Clapton is where Satow grew up. Stafford Allen and Sons were a producer of pure drugs and essential oils based in Finsbury near Islington. Daniel Bell Hanbury was a leading expert in the medicinal applications of plants, insects, and chemicals. Sir John Mitchell, or Michel perhaps, Satow misspelled the name, was commander of British troops in China and Hong Kong. Henry Ellis, Hong Kong to Manila. Ellis took the trip in 1856. The Pasig River flows from Laguna de Bay, which is a lake, through Manila to the sea. D. Gilmore, an assistant at the Imperial Maritime Customs at Shanghai. Sir Frederick Wright Bruce, British minister to China. In Pinyin, Dao Tai, the Chinese intendant of Shanghai. There were 95 Tao Tai in Qing, China. Okay, good. So let's continue with the main diary. I hear that Medhurst has already asked Bruce's authority to turn the Tao Tai out and to take the city under European, if not English-only protection. Saw Green and another deputy assistant commissary general named Hayter, whose nose was pink with a blood-red tip, light-haired and awfully padded. Although I had promised old Muirhead half to go to his meeting, I deferred the opportunity till his chapel is opened, which is the second Sunday I have omitted divine worship. Naughty. February 17th, Monday, called on Medhurst at 2 p.m. as he had desired, but before we could enter on the subject of debate, Alabaster entered fresh from the expedition to Plover Point. It appears that they disembarked all the force and were marching up when two men came down to meet them and said that the pirates or Taipings, as they turned out to be, were willing to give up the junk, cargo, and men, but desired that the English would not enter the place. That had no effect, and the troops marched in and, turning the Chinamen out, took possession of their quarters. All the cargo of Fletcher's junk, except 100 barrels of tobacco, the junk and men were recovered, and the crew of two of Denton Company's junks were liberated from the confinement in which they had been placed by the pirates. 5 junks belonging to the enemy were burnt, and also all their property except what was lootable. The houses were spared, and as they belonged to the villagers. 3 guns were discovered and sunk in the middle of the Yangtze, but their arms were not taken from them. Among other things, 200 cases of fine rifle gunpowder were destroyed. All this was effected without bloodshed, though the Taipings, in number about 300, seemed rather inclined for a brush with our troops and grumbled at their leaders for not permitting it. The Coromandel, Bouncer, and Ringdove were employed on this expedition. When the Buster had left, Medhurst informed me that as Jameson had not appeared, I might come again tomorrow. And I think the Buster must be Alabaster, is it? I'm not sure. And directed me to let him know his presence was desired. I asked if books and teachers were allowed, and he told me he did not know. We've had Alabaster mentioned, yes. So I think that's the Buster is Alabaster. I then went to F.A. Clifton and heard sad news of my photographic apparatus. I unpacked the camera and found that several bottles had smashed inside and made a filthy mess. Told them to sell for what it would fetch. Passed through the French settlement into the city, visiting on my way a curiosity shop, when the owner seemed afraid of my bolting with something. For when I went behind the counter, he stood in the doorway. So C. Alabaster was the British consulate's interpreter. He was seeing plenty of action against the Taipings. He wrote of watching one admiral killed and another wounded, a fortune which happens to few, and was proud of a British officer's letter which said that in 1862-3 he had been more under fire than perhaps any man alive. P.D. Coates, The China Consuls, page 151. Fletcher and Company and Denton Company were both trading companies. And then there's those 3 ships, Coromandel, Bouncer, and Ringdove. They were all British man-of-war ships. Continuing with the diary, it is plain that the Chinese have no idea of picking one's pockets, for though I have given them plenty of opportunities, they have never stolen anything. I entered by the Porte Montauban, and after advancing a short distance, soon turned to the left. The first shop that engaged my notice was a carved bamboo shop, into which I entered to get a walking stick, but could not agree as to price. The shopkeeper there showed me a lot of carved bamboo rulers, very pretty but not true, so I did not invest. Not true, as in not accurate, I think. The usual crowd collected, or not straight perhaps, the usual crowd collected round, going out a pile of coarsely coloured printed pictures attracted my notice, and when I asked the price, was told $4 a dozen. I burst into a horse laugh and said 4 cash was nearer the price. The accompanying sketch is supposed to represent a Chinaman grinding corn. He jumps on one end of the thick lever and so raises the hammerhead, which next falls, and by a succession of blows, pounds the grain into the floor. Porte Montauban, the north gate to the city, named after a French general. In Chinese, it is known as Xin Beimen. So here's the sketch of a Chinese mortar for bruising corn. So the man stands on one end and then just jumps off and the hammerhead goes down. That's a sketch by Satow himself in his diary. The man was very much astonished at me trying to sketch his dodge. I wandered, entering a good many shops in search of ink, though I bought none, till I came to a place at which I had before observed a good many entering and passing out. I crowded in and walked round. The first thing I saw was some Chinamen playing at teetotum for cash. Next, I spotted a domino maker's and then crossed over and bought a set of Chinese chessmen for 100 cash after a good deal of misunderstanding. I could not get a chessboard. They are thick wooden drafts with a character on each side cut in and painted. Of black, there are 5 Chinese ping soldiers, 2 ma horses, 2 sei scholars, 2 seang, I suppose, to assist, 2 shui, a leader, 2 paon, a cannon, 2 che, a chariot of white, 5 tsu, soldiers, 2 ma, 2 she, to act as a magistrate, 2 she, a pig above his inserted siang, elephant, 1 siang to take 2 paon cannon, 2 che chariots. I shall make my teacher tell me the rules. I also saw some fortune telling by means of rattling cash in a box. 88. A teetotum is a 6-sided spinning top marked with letters or numbers. People would gamble on the result of the loss. This would have been a Chinese version of the game. Back to the diary. I saw also some fortune telling by means of rattling cash in a box and divining characters and drawing lots, which seemed to be comprised in one lot. In addition to this, there was an excited-looking bloke reciting some stirring tale. When I came out, I produced a pencil and wrote down the characters over the inner and outer portals. They are respectively, those characters there. I can probably give the Japanese reading, but that's not very helpful. See the footnote. I am as yet in perfect darkness as to the collective meaning of the symbols or to the uses and character of the place. The last shop I went into was a silk shop where I saw men winding silk onto reels from skeins. I also penetrated the inner shop without asking leave and saw them wearing ribbons, but the place was small. Leave is permission in this case. I finished up by a walk along the ramparts to the Porte Montauban from the next one south of it. Before passing out of the city, I mounted the lookout and had a pretty good view of the river, shipping and houses. My attention was especially called to the French cathedral in the city, where French priests in Chinese costume go to perform service and real Chinamen go to lie on the mats and sleep. I came along the Bund just in time to see the last of the review and to meet Lenny, with whom I took a turn. They raised up a fund to build up a bund for poor devils to walk at Shanghai. Al Smith. Received invitation to dine at Seamson and Company's on Wednesday next, but too sleepy to answer it tonight. February the 18th, Tuesday, ordered dumbbells to be made, £9 each. Bought a Chinese compass and some apples, 4 for 25 cents, or cash, I suppose, which said apples turned out rotten. Rice came in the evening and invited me to dine on board on Thursday. February 19th, Wednesday, dined at Seamson's, played a game of chess with Ying. Of course, he beat me. All Germans at Seamson's, but got on very well, as all could speak English. Got home at 11:15 and finished up among the pandies. Consul wants me to write and copy letters if it turns out that I am to stop here 2 years. I will write home to Earl Russell and kick up a row, but it is not worthwhile to do it if I have to go up to Pekin soon. Okay, so These two phrases, read from right to left, mean be straightforward and righteous and keep coastal areas safe. Those were the two of up at 89 there. The cathedral had only been, this is the French cathedral, had only been completed the previous year. It still stands. A road following the west bank of the Huangpu River, what's referring to 91, which is what? The Bund, or the Bund. A road following the west bank of the Huangpu River and the commercial heart of the city. It is now known as the Zhongshan Dongyi Road. And 92, where's that? Can't see it. Yes, Up Among the Pandis. This book by Lieutenant Vivian Majendi is a memoir about the Indian Mutiny. And 93, Russell was the British Foreign Secretary at the time. I must say, Robert's notes are exceptionally good. Okay, February the 20th, Thursday. A part of Mariners and Bluejackets went off in the Coromandel and Reynard to act in conjunction with Colonel Ward's Chinese against the rebels, whom they defeated with great slaughter and a loss of about 10 men to themselves. The French also took a part in the fight. The village where the rebels were was burnt to the ground. Friday, February the 21st, the expedition returned this afternoon, bringing with it about 30 Changmo, as the typings are called, on account of their long hair. I saw them on the Bund, guarded by one of Ward's men with their pigtails tied 2 and 2. They were going into the city to have their heads taken off, I suppose. Alabaster captured one to make a boy of, but he was only a villager. Saturday, February the 22nd, news has come that we are to go up to Peking as soon as possible, perhaps by the next mail. Called on F.A. Clifton, who informed me that my photographic apparatus went for 57 taels. Paid Muirhead for the first volume of Leg and got a promise of a Medhurst Chinese dictionary. Was very seedy all day from the combined effects of a cold and 2 aperient pills I took the night before. Called on Rice and invited him on shore to play billiards, but he came not. Why, I don't know. He asked me to dine on Sunday, as it will be his last day on board, as he is superseded to go home. I must not forget to send those silks by him. I think those were presents for his mother, maybe. February 23rd, Sunday, took a walk with Middleton to Racecourse and came across the most awful stinks I ever smelt. The ditch and rampart seemed to be getting on pretty well. Very cold wind was blowing, and I caught cold in my face. Rice came in the afternoon and told me that he had already moved on board the frigate, so that his invitation to dine was of no good. February 24th, 25th, 26th, confined to my room with faceache. Ying has not made his appearance since Thursday last. February 27th, Thursday. As there is a warm wind, I ventured out. Went to Clifton's and received 48 taels as the net proceeds of my photographic apparatus. Called on Muirhead, who promised me for certain a copy of Medhurst's dictionary. Wrote to P&O, that's Peninsular and Oriental agent, to see if any box had arrived for me. Nothing was the answer. Repaid Jones the 50 taels. Okay, so the notes. 94, both are British man-of-war ships, Coromandel and Reynard. 95 is Frederick Townsend Ward, an American, Colonel Ward, who commanded a militia of Europeans and Asians to defend Shanghai. 96, it's the Chang Mao. James Legg, 97, was a missionary in China who became the first professor of Chinese at Oxford University. Satow would have been referring to his 5-volume work, The Chinese Classics, with a translation, critical and exegetical notes, prolegomena, and copious indexes. Volume 1 was Confucian Analects, The Great Learning and the Doctrine of the Mean, first published in 1861. That's note 97, first volume of Legg. And 98, Medhurst Chinese Dictionary, is a dictionary of the Hokkien dialect, of the Hokkien, maybe, of the Chinese language, according to the reading and colloquial idioms, containing about 12,000 characters. Back to the main text. Repaid Jones the 50 taels he lent me, losing 25C by difference of exchange and not asking him for change out of a dollar for 89C. Ying came not. Face ache not abated. My face right cheek so swelled that I can't see the tip of my nose, and I look just like a Chinaman on one side of my face. February 28th to March 1st, played billiards with Middleton and beat him at last. Saturday called on Rice on the Imperieuse, and he showed one all over the ship, went up the screw alley and saw the machinery for drawing back the shaft so as to allow of the screws being drawn out of the water. In the afternoon, the expedition returned from Min Hong, 13 miles up the river, leaving the admiral and staff up there in the Coromandel. It seems that 350 bluejackets and Marines, 35 RA, 300 French sailors and 700 awardsmen landed on Friday night and encamped on the bank of the river when some shots were fired at them by a reconnoitering party of rebels from Min Hong. At 7:45 a.m., they arrived before the place, which was fortified with 2 ditches and a wall. The enemy numbered 5,000 and made a good show of resistance until silenced by the 12-pounder field piece and Bradshaw's 6 guns. Then an assault was made, and the Marines got in at one gate while Ward's men did the same at another. About 1,400 rebels were killed, the Chinese cutting off the heads of all the wounded. 1 French killed and several wounded, 5 English wounded, 2 of which will not live, and a good lot of Ward's men killed and wounded. The enemy had rifles and rockets and fought very well hand to hand. March the 2nd, Sunday. As Middleton and I were walking in the Malu, we met a Chinese female surrounded by a crowd of coolies who was quite drunk or mad. Her hair was loose and she had taken off 2 pieces of her upper clothing, which she dipped in the gutter, then struck at the Chinese around when they approached too near. Called on Jones and borrowed C.P. Hodgson's book on Japan, which is an extremely foolish, badly written piece of truck. March the 3rd, Monday, drew $150 of pay, walked into the city and right to the other side of it, where the French are building a trench and rampart like ours, went into a good lot of shops, and at one of them bought the first half of the Confucian Analects for 100 cash. Saw some picture books, which I resolved to return for next day. Was out altogether 3.25 hours. Okay. 99. Let's go back. Yes. Not asking him for change out of a dollar for 89C. Satow might sound a little miserly here, but he was short of money. As it did in this situation, the necessity of dealing in different currencies made matters worse. China did not have a system of silver coinage, only copper, and large payments would be made in silver, which fluctuated in value. For convenience, the treaty ports used silver dollars, but the colonial treasurer in Hong Kong paid the staff in whatever currency was available, which could be several silver dollars, rupees, or English coins. The losses in changing from one currency to another could be as much as 20%. P.D. Coates, The China Consuls, page 88. Hodgson's book on Japan. C.P. Hodgson, A Residence at Nagasaki and Hakodate in 1859 to 1860, with an account of Japan generally, with a series of letters on Japan by his wife, first published in 1861. Satow didn't think much of that book. Carrying on with the diary. In the evening, went on board the Imperieuse to hear the band play and to see Rice. The band was deafening and did not play well, at least I thought not. March the 4th, went into the city again and gave $1 for some illustrated Chinese books, which books I gave to Rice in the evening for 50C. They were prints of scenery of the parts of the body and of all sorts of birds, plants, fish, and beasts. Rice dined with me, and afterwards we played billiards to my detriment. I suppose he must have lost. March the 5th, Wednesday. Dined with J.S. Robison of Lindsay and Company's, whom I had called on the day before. Saw Henderson, Lindsay and Company's agent at Tientsin, and B. Dallas, who greatly to my disgust went to sleep during dessert. In the billiard room met Smith, C.H. Dallas, and Dulkin, also Bozanquet of the Flamer. Smith proposed a Spanish game of pool with skittles, at which he contrived to take the pool. Every time I lost $50, which I could not pay and would not borrow, and there it rests. Got home to bed at 12:30. March the 6th, Thursday. Received letters from father and Fred Burndes, and a joint one from Arthur and Agneta, brother and sister. Was much surprised to get a letter from Trizzle, and must write to tell him all about China when I get to Peking. I'm not sure who Trizzle is. Did some work at the office and wrote my letters for the mail. Consul told me that I shall go up by the next but one mail to the north. Played billiards again with Middleton and lost. Rice and Parker of the Coromandel go home by this mail. Lucky fellows. March the 7th, Friday. Walked with Middleton to the bookshops in the city and got 2 picture books. The one I got was the illustrations to a herbal. Of course, it was of no use to buy the rest in my present state of knowledge of Chinese. Some very good ones were shown us, but we could not come up to their prices. At one place, had a struggle with the shopkeeper, and I fancy he imparted a louse to me, for I caught one in the evening. Shall take precious good care not to get too near a Chinese again. There he is buying books or thinking about it already, age 19, I think. Saturday, March the 8th. Attended a sale in the morning and got most awfully tired, and besides that, caught a cold and headache. Called on old Muirhead and got his Medhurst dictionary out of him for $10, 1 volume newly rebound. It certainly was very kind of him. Dined at Dallas, where I saw Maitland, that drawling, through-the-nose talking snob, and a man from Fuchan who seemed half drunk, but certainly told some good tales. Of course, the conversation became smutty. So 101, note 101, C.H. Dallas is Charles Henry Dallas, a clerk at Barnes, Dallas and Company. Bosanquet, George Stanley Bosanquet was the commander of the gunboat HMS Flamer, and R.K. Maitland of the trading company Maitland Bush and Company in New Chuang, now known as Yingkou. Right. Sunday, 9th of March, Monday the 10th, and Tuesday the 11th of March. Bad cold and therefore indoors nearly all day. Had intended to go and hear old Muirhead preach, but when I was ready, found it too late. Wednesday, the 12th of March, finished my vocabulary today and got one from the consulate office by a man named Pillay. Ying seems to have given up teaching entirely. I never saw such a set of blokes as are now collected at Smith's. First, Nimmo, blind of one eye and lame. 2 Yankee captains, the engineer of the Pao Shan with purple nose and face and a red streak down his forehead corresponding to his nose. His hair is never tidy and his head is tied up in a black handkerchief. Then a scowler who sits back from the table and leers at everybody, and his left neighbour in particular, who is C.H. Smith, a grey-haired, grey-whiskered, fat-chopped glutton. He does not like to see his boy wait on others and always helps himself to the fruit and gives away the crust. Really is sort of cartoon text, isn't it? Cutting from a newspaper stuck in. Original poems for German minds. There was a large pond and a deepish pond too, and across it great swans at their ease swam and flew, went backwards and forwards with splash and with sound, or in confident majesty sailed round and round. One day a fat chicken that lived thereabout stood watching to see the swans glide in and out. Now still and now waving their pinions of snow, she thought of all things she should like to do so. This silly fat chicken was German by birth and was meant to live quietly, clucking on earth, and her business with water was only a joke, just sometimes to wash when too grimy with smoke. So, footnote, C.H. Smith worked for Kramer and Company storekeepers, and this poem, the original poems for German minds, is about the naval ambitions of the German Confederation. Germany became one nation in 1871. The swans would have been the British Navy, and the poem is saying that the Germans should remain a land power, as they had always been, and not attempt to become a naval one as well. Satow tended to be ambivalent about Germany, even though he spoke the language to some extent, had German relations whom he visited, and studied Roman law in Marburg in the mid-1870s. So continuing with the poem. But the chick felt ambition distending her crop, and she thought it as easy to swim as to hop. Though the swans gave her warning with friendliest shout, "You silly fat chicken, mind what you're about. My feet, wings and feathers, for aught I can see, are as good as the swans are for swimming," says she. "And though I'm fat and feeble, and they're strong of limb, is that any reason why I should not swim? Can't Germany have a navy? Why should not I try then, as well as those birds? It's nothing but jealousy dictates their words. And I know I shall do it with grace and with skill, for a bird that can think can do just what she will." Then in this poor ignorant animal flew, but soon found her friends the swan's cautions were true. She splashed and she dashed and she turned herself round and heartily wished herself safe on the ground. But now was too late. 'Twas too late to begin to repent. The harder she struggled, the deeper she went. And at last, when each effort did nothing but fail, a good-natured swan pulled her out by the tail. Then the swans, I perceived, began loudly to laugh, till the poor little German was mad at their chaff. But its moral, my dears, we all understand, and all fat little Germans will stick upon land. Okay. So that's a newspaper cutting. So continuing with the diary, sorry, from the paragraph above. Then two merchant skippers with black beards who always drink one bottle of sherry and one of beer for dinner, and then affectionately quarrel who shall put his name down. Last night came a skipper who praised the justice and skill of Markham and insulted T.T. Meadows for fining him $50, £5, and $200 in 3 days. I thought he must have a regular scoundrel to incur such a lot of fines in a short time. He acknowledged himself to be a perfect cure. Two lieutenants of the 99th, a jockey and an ex-milliner's assistant, make up the catalogue. Sunday, 16th of March, went to hear old Muirhead preach and got to the chapel in the middle of the long prayer. He preached a good sermon, but I did not carry away much of it. Taking advantage of the door being opened while he was giving out the last hymn, slipped away and so avoided speaking to him or his wife. Finished the Adelphi of Terence today, of which author I have read the Hesira Heotontimoroumenos, not sure if that's right pronunciation, Innochus and Andrea since my arrival here. Began upon Virgil and read one book and half of the Aeneid. I must read that through, then half a dozen plays of Plautus and afterwards Cicero and 2 Curtius. At Peking, I can also begin a course of Greek, Homer, Sophocles, and Aristophanes, and what other authors I can pick up. Nor must I forget my German. For English reading, I can take Sir W. Hamilton on metaphysics after I have finished Lyell, and so I think to employ myself for a good long time. Okay, so T.T. Meadows is Thomas Taylor Meadows, a British consular interpreter. And then 107, as Satow says, these are works by Terence, Publius Terentius Afer, the Roman playwright. In English, Adelphi is the brothers, Hesira, the mother-in-law, Heotontimoroumenos, usually written Heotontimoroumenos, the self-tormentor. Eunuchus, Satow missed out the first U, the eunuch, and Andrea, the girl from Andros. I'm sure that when my recent reading of the diary for 1871, Satow was reading Eunuchus. He did tend to reread things quite a lot. Okay, and so William Hamilton on metaphysics is lectures on metaphysics and logic. And then Lyell is probably Sir Charles Lyell's Principles of Geology. And that, my friends, is the end of Satow's diary for Shanghai 1861 to 2. So I will stop the share and thank you very much for accompanying me on this mad dash through the diary with footnotes admirably supplied by Professor Robert Morton, my colleague. Okay, thank you very much. I will stop here. See you again soon.